Ethan was just a waiter. Every morning he woke up in his small room on the edge of the giant space station. He put on the same uniform, cleaned his shoes, and walked to the cafe where he worked. The cafe was small compared to the rest of the station, but it was always full. Aliens of every shape and size came there to eat, drink, and talk. For them, Ethan was invisible, just another human servant. Humans were not seen as important in this part of the galaxy. Most aliens thought humans were weak, slow, and ordinary. Ethan never argued. He just did his job quietly. He carried trays, cleaned tables, and smiled politely. He watched as tall, reptilian guards shouted for more drinks. He watched as insect-like merchants bargained with their sharp, clicking voices. He watched as glowing-skinned nobles ignored him, like he was part of the furniture. To them, Ethan was nobody, but Ethan had something they did not see. He noticed everything, every movement, every detail, every shadow that passed through the cafe. He listened when others thought he was not listening. He observed when others were too busy talking. He was invisible, yes, but that gave him freedom. Nobody feared him. Nobody suspected him. And because of that, Ethan learned secrets hidden in plain sight. One evening, the cafe was quieter than usual. The station's artificial lights dimmed into night cycle. Ethan was cleaning glasses behind the counter when the door opened. A stranger walked in. He looked different from the usual customers. His cloak was torn, his breathing heavy, and his eyes shifted nervously. He sat in the far corner, away from everyone. Ethan felt something unusual about him. There was tension in the air, as if danger had entered with him. Ethan carried water to the table. The stranger looked up with tired eyes. For a moment, their gazes locked. Ethan saw pain, fear, and something else. Desperation, the man whispered. "Thank you," in a voice so low only Ethan could hear. Ethan nodded, placing the glass down. As he turned to leave, he noticed something shocking. The stranger's sleeve slipped back, revealing blood, a deep wound across his arm, still fresh. Ethan froze. He should have walked away. He should have called security. But instead, he felt something stir inside him. Compassion. Without thinking, he whispered, "Wait here." Ethan rushed to the kitchen and grabbed a clean cloth. He returned quietly and slid it across the table. The stranger looked surprised. "You help me?" he asked, his voice shaking. Ethan only nodded. The stranger pressed the cloth against his wound, eyes glimmering with gratitude. "Why?" the alien asked. "Why would you help me? You do not know who I am." Ethan gave a small smile. "Because you need help." The stranger stared at him for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, whispering urgently, "Listen carefully, human. Waiter, you're kind, and for that your life will change forever." Before Ethan could respond, the cafe door burst open. 2 armored aliens stepped inside, scanning the room. Hunters. The stranger pulled his hood low. Ethan's heart pounded. The soldiers looked around, eyes sharp, weapons ready. Ethan walked forward calmly, blocking their view. "Can I help you, sirs?" he asked in a steady voice. One of them hissed, "We are looking for a fugitive. Did you see anyone suspicious enter?" Ethan's mind raced. He could betray the stranger and be safe, or he could lie and take the risk. He felt the stranger's hidden eyes watching him from the corner. "I only saw a group of traitors," Ethan said, pointing to the opposite hall. The soldiers narrowed their eyes. For a moment, Ethan thought they saw through him. But then they turned and left quickly. The cafe fell silent again. Ethan's hands were shaking. He turned back, but the stranger was already on his feet. He placed something small into Ethan's pocket with a swift motion. "Your kindness will be remembered," he whispered. And then, before Ethan could say anything, the stranger slipped through the back door and vanished into the shadows. Ethan stood frozen. What had just happened? Why did he help a stranger he didn't even know? Slowly, he reached into his pocket. His fingers touched something warm, something that pulsed with light. He pulled out a small device, glowing faintly in his hand. It looked alien, advanced, and mysterious. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This was not just a simple object. He knew deep inside that his life as a simple waiter was over. Something extraordinary had begun. The cafe was quiet. The glasses sparkled under the dim lights. But Ethan's world had changed forever, and in that silence he whispered to himself, "What have I done?" Ethan could not sleep that night. He lay on his narrow bed staring at the glowing device in his hand. It was no bigger than his palm, shaped like a smooth stone, but covered with tiny lines that shifted and moved like living light. Every time he blinked, the pattern seemed different. He tried placing it on the table, but it hummed softly, almost calling to him. It was alive, or something close to alive, and somehow it had chosen him. Ethan turned it over again and again, searching for buttons or seams, but there was nothing, just the flowing light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Finally, out of curiosity, he pressed his finger against one of the glowing lines. At once the device reacted. A flash of light filled the room, bright and sharp. Ethan gasped as visions burst into his mind. Not dreams, not imagination, real images. He saw maps of stars he had never known, planets spinning with strange rings, fleets of ships sailing across black space. He heard voices speaking in alien languages, harsh and musical at the same time. And then he heard something else, a voice that whispered directly into his thoughts. Key detected, human pattern accepted. Ethan dropped the device in shock. It landed softly on the sheets, still glowing. His heart pounded as he sat frozen. What was this thing? Why did it recognize him? And why him of all people, just a simple waiter? The next morning, Ethan tried to act normal. He folded his uniform, tied his apron, and went to work. But his mind was not in the cafe. Every clink of glass, every shout of alien voices felt distant. All he could think about was the device hidden in his pocket. It was heavy with meaning, though small in size. He felt as if it watched him, even when he did not touch it. Later that day, while wiping tables, he overheard two alien soldiers talking in sharp tones. "The artifact is missing," one said. "The overseers demand it returned no matter the cost," the other replied. Ethan's hands froze. They were searching, they were hunting, and he had the very thing they wanted. Panic rose in his chest, but he forced himself to keep wiping the table as if he had heard nothing. No one could know. That evening, when the cafe closed, Ethan returned to his room. He locked the door, pulled out the device, and whispered to himself, "Okay, show me what you are." The device lit up again, patterns flowing like rivers of light. This time he kept his hand steady. The voice returned, calm and mechanical. "Beacon active, energy stable, host accepted." Ethan frowned. "Beacon? What is that?" But the device did not answer in words. Instead, it showed him visions again, this time clearer, sharper. He saw battles across the stars, alien fleets clashing with beams of fire. He saw civilizations rising and falling, and he saw the beacon itself, always at the center of change. It was more than a tool. It was a guide, a map, a key, and maybe a weapon. And now it was his. Ethan sat back, sweating. He was just a human waiter. He had no power, no influence, no importance. And yet, this thing had chosen him. Why? Because he helped a stranger? Because he showed kindness when others would have turned away? The thought made his chest tighten. It didn't make sense. But maybe it didn't need to. Over the next days, the beacon began to change his life. Whenever Ethan touched it, he felt stronger, sharper. He could remember details with perfect clarity. He could sense danger before it happened. Once, while carrying a tray in the cafe, he stepped aside just before a customer knocked over a glass. The glass should have shattered, but instead Ethan caught it smoothly without even looking. The customer stared. Ethan smiled nervously, pretending it was luck, but he knew it wasn't luck. It was the beacon. At night, the device showed him paths. Sometimes he dreamed of walking on alien worlds. Sometimes he saw himself standing before massive starships. Sometimes he saw shadows chasing him. He always woke with his heart pounding, but deep down he understood. This was not a gift without cost. The beacon was powerful, and power always attracted danger. One evening, as Ethan locked up the cafe, he noticed something strange. A group of alien bounty hunters stood at the far end of the street. They weren't looking at him, not yet, but they asked questions to shopkeepers, showing an image on a device. Ethan caught a glimpse. It was the stranger, the one he had helped. His throat went dry. They were close, too close. If they kept searching, sooner or later they would find him too, because the beacon was now his burden. That night, Ethan sat on his bed with the device in his hand. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" For the first time, the beacon pulsed with light as if answering. The voice in his head returned. "Guide, protector, human is key." Ethan trembled. "Protector? I am no protector. I am just a waiter." The light pulsed again, stronger. "Human is key." Ethan's eyes filled with fear and wonder at the same time. He realized something frightening. The stranger hadn't given him the beacon by accident. It was destiny, and destiny was already knocking at his door. The space station was never truly quiet. Engines hummed, neon lights flickered, and voices echoed in every corner. But tonight, Ethan felt the silence pressing down on him. He moved quickly through the narrow halls, his hand gripping the pocket. Where the beacon rested, every step reminded him that hunters were close. Every shadow seemed to follow him. He tried to act normal, but his heart raced. He kept hearing footsteps that weren't his own. He told himself it was just his imagination, but deep inside he knew the search had begun. The bounty hunters wanted the stranger, yes, but soon they would realize the truth. The beacon had passed to someone else, and that someone was him. At the cafe, Ethan worked as usual, carrying trays, wiping tables, smiling politely, but his eyes kept drifting to the door. Two soldiers walked in and ordered drinks. Their armor glimmered with the mark of the overseers, the same soldiers who had searched the cafe before. Ethan's stomach tightened. They were still hunting as he served them. He overheard their words. "The human must be hiding him," one said. "Search the lower levels tonight." The other replied. Ethan almost dropped the tray. They suspected humans. That meant he had little time left when his shift ended. Ethan slipped out the back door. The streets were glowing with blue lights filled with merchants and machines, but he walked fast, head down, trying to disappear in the crowd. Suddenly, the beacon pulsed in his pocket. Warm, insistent. And then, Ethan felt it, danger near. He turned a corner and froze. 3 bounty hunters stood waiting, their weapons glowing with sharp light. One of them hissed, "There he is." Ethan's breath caught. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't a hero. But the beacon pulsed again, and his body moved before his mind could think. A shot of energy flashed past his head. Ethan ducked, ran forward, and dove into the side alley. The hunters shouted and chased him. Ethan's legs pumped, his lungs burned. The station blurred as he ran through metal halls and narrow stairways. Every corner brought more fear. Every step brought more danger. Yet somehow he was still ahead. The beacon guided him. It whispered in his thoughts. Left, now. Ethan obeyed without question, turning into a service tunnel just as another blast struck the wall behind him. Sparks rained down. The smell of burning metal filled the air. He slid into the tunnel. Crawling on his knees, the hunters followed, their footsteps heavy. Ethan's hands trembled as he crawled faster. Then the beacon pulsed again. A glowing panel appeared on the wall, symbols flashing. Ethan hesitated, but the voice whispered, "Touch." He pressed his hand against the panel. At once, the wall slid open, revealing a hidden shaft. Ethan dropped inside, landing hard on a lower deck. The wall sealed above him, cutting off the hunters' shouts. "Silence!" Ethan gasped for air, his whole body shook. He looked at the beacon in his hand, glowing softly. "You saved me," he whispered. The beacon pulsed once, almost like an answer, but Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The overseers would not stop. The hunters would not give up. They would search every level of the station, and if they found out a human carried the beacon, they would tear the station apart to take it. The next day, news spread quickly. Screens across the market showed a message from the overseers, a reward for information, a description of the fugitive, and a warning. Anyone hiding the artifact will be punished. Ethan swallowed hard. The walls of the station felt tighter than ever. He could not stay. He had to escape. That evening, Ethan walked to the docking bay. Starships of every kind filled the giant hangar. Merchants loaded crates. Pilots shouted orders. Engines roared. It was chaos, but to Ethan, it was hope. If he could slip onto a ship, maybe he could get away, but then the beacon pulsed again and the voice whispered, "Not escape path, destiny." Ethan frowned, whispering back, "I just want to survive." The beacon glowed stronger. Survival is destiny. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Ethan spun around, heart leaping. It was an old freighter captain, a human like him. "Looking for passage?" the man asked. Ethan hesitated, then nodded quickly. The captain studied him with sharp eyes. "You look like trouble, boy, but I'll take you, for the right price." Ethan almost agreed. But then he noticed something. Across the bay, the overseer's soldiers were moving in, scanning the crowds. His time was gone. "They're here," Ethan whispered. The captain followed his gaze and cursed. "Fine, get in, now." Ethan ran up the ramp, heart pounding. The engines roared. The ship shook. The soldiers shouted and pointed. A blast struck the side of the freighter, but it lifted anyway, rising into the void. Ethan clutched the beacon as the station grew smaller in the window. He was free for now, but deep inside, he knew freedom was only the start. The chase had only just begun. The freighter rattled as it left the space station. Engines groaned. Metal panels shook, but it held together. Ethan sat in the corner of the cargo bay, clutching the beacon. His breath was still fast from the chase. The captain, a gray-bearded human named Duran, walked over, eyeing him carefully. "You running from something, boy?" Duran asked. Ethan hesitated, then shook his head. I don't know, it's complicated." The captain gave a dry laugh. "It's always complicated out here." He didn't press further, but Ethan could see the suspicion in his eyes. For the first time in his life, Ethan was away from the station. Stars stretched endlessly outside the small window. It should have been beautiful, peaceful, but all Ethan felt was pressure. The beacon pulsed softly in his hand, reminding him of what he carried, and who was hunting him. Hours later, Duran guided the freighter to a hidden outpost on a lonely moon. The station there was old, rusted, and quiet, but Duran assured him, safe enough for a night. As they docked, Ethan noticed something. Other ships were already there. Sleek, powerful, and heavily armed. Duran frowned. "That's unusual." When they stepped inside, Ethan's unease grew stronger. Aliens filled the station's hall, tall warriors with glowing armor, insectoid traders with blades on their arms, reptilian mercenaries with cold eyes. They weren't. Here by chance, Ethan knew it, and soon his fear was proven right. A voice boomed across the hall. "Human boy, step forward." Ethan froze. From the shadows, an overseer commander appeared, his armor black and lined with silver. The crowd fell silent. Duran muttered, "Stars above, you brought trouble here." Soldiers surrounded Ethan in seconds, pulling the beacon from his hand. The commander studied it, holding it high. "This is what we seek," he declared. The aliens around him murmured, eyes wide with hunger and greed. The commander placed his clawed hand on the beacon. The device glowed faintly, but then went dark. He tried again, pressing harder. Nothing. The hall grew restless. Another alien, taller and fiercer, grabbed the beacon. He roared, pouring energy from his hands into it. The beacon flickered once, then dimmed again. Still nothing. Confusion spread through the crowd. They passed the device between them, one after another. Each tried, each failed. The beacon refused them all. Then in frustration, the commander shoved it back into Ethan's chest. "Try it, human, show us. What trick you hide?" Ethan's hands shook as he held the beacon. The moment his skin touched it, the device came alive. Light burst across the hall, glowing brighter than the station lamps. Symbols danced in the air, spinning in circles. The crowd gasped, stepping back in awe and fear. Ethan's heart raced. He hadn't done anything, just touched it. But to the beacon, that was enough. The commander's eyes widened. "Impossible," he whispered. One of the reptilian mercenaries hissed. "It responds only to him." Another alien muttered, "The legends are true, the beacon chooses." The hall filled with voices, shouting, arguing, demanding. But all their words circled around one truth. The beacon worked only for Ethan, only for a human. Ethan clutched it tighter, his mind spinning. Why him? Why humans? He was no warrior, no leader, no chosen one. And yet the device treated him as if he was the key. The aliens argued louder. Some wanted to seize him, others wanted to protect him. Fights broke out, weapons were drawn. The hall descended into chaos. Joran grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward a side door. "Move now!" the captain shouted. They slipped into a narrow corridor as blasts of energy lit up the hall behind them. Ethan's heart pounded, the beacon glowing like fire. In his hands, "Why does it only work for me?" Ethan asked desperately as they ran. Joran's voice was grim. "Because humans are underestimated, boy, and the galaxy doesn't like to admit what it doesn't understand." They reached the docking bay, alarms ringing across the station. Ethan could hear soldiers shouting behind them. The captain shoved him toward the freighter ramp. "Get inside," he ordered. As the engines roared to life, Ethan looked back. The overseer commander stood in the doorway, eyes burning with fury. He pointed at Ethan, his voice cutting through the chaos. "The human is the key, bring him to me alive." The freighter lifted, escaping into the blackness of space. Ethan collapsed against the wall, clutching the beacon. His hands trembled, his chest burned. He whispered to himself, "Why me? I'm nobody, just a waiter." But the beacon pulsed in his hands, strong and steady. The voice returned, clear and calm. "Human is key. Human is chosen." Ethan closed his eyes, tears stinging. He didn't want this. He didn't ask for it. But the truth was undeniable now. The beacon had chosen him, and the galaxy had seen it with their own eyes. From this moment on, there would be no hiding, no returning to a simple life. The overseers would hunt him. Empires would rise against him. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark of courage flickered. Maybe, just maybe, he was meant for this. The stars stretched endlessly before the freighter, and Ethan whispered to himself, "If humans really are special, then I will find out why." The freighter drifted through the silent void. Stars glimmered beyond the window, but Ethan's eyes were fixed on the beacon in his hands. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, steady and alive. He felt its warmth through his skin, and with every pulse he felt connected to something far greater than himself. Captain Joran sat across from him, studying the glow. "You need to tell me the truth, boy," the old man said, his voice rough. "What is that? Thing you carry?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't know, it called itself the beacon." Joran's face hardened. "The beacon," he repeated slowly, as if tasting a word from a legend. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I've heard whispers, old stories told in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Stories about an ancient device that could guide whole fleets through the void. Stories about a key that only a chosen one could use." Ethan shook his head quickly. "No, that's not me. I'm no chosen one, I'm just a waiter." But Joran's eyes stayed locked on him. "Then why does it shine in your hands and die in theirs?" Ethan had no answer. He gripped the beacon tighter, his chest heavy with fear and confusion. It wasn't fair, he never asked for this, never wanted this, and yet here it was, forcing him down a path he could not escape. That night, while Joran slept in the cockpit, Ethan sat alone in the cargo bay. The beacon pulsed brighter. Drawing him closer, he hesitated, then pressed his palm against its surface. At once, the world around him vanished. He was no longer in the freighter. He stood in a vast void of light and shadow, endless and quiet. And before him, a figure appeared, tall and shimmering, neither alien nor human, but something beyond. The figure's voice echoed inside his mind, calm and timeless. Human bearer, you are chosen. Ethan's heart pounded. Why me? I don't understand. The figure's form shifted, showing images. Worlds burning, fleets clashing, civilizations falling into dust. The galaxy is fragile, the voice said. Empires rise and destroy, power blinds the strong, greed consumes the mighty, Ethan whispered. And me? I'm nothing. I'm nobody. The voice grew warmer. That is why you are no emperor, no warlord, no ruler with ambition. You are a human, underestimated, unseen, forgotten, yet capable of kindness when others choose cruelty. Ethan saw himself helping the wounded stranger in the cafe. He saw himself lying to protect him, risking everything. You acted without reward, the voice said. You gave without demand, and so the beacon accepts you. The light shifted again, showing the beacon itself, floating above alien hands that failed to hold it. The beacon is not a weapon, though many believe it is, the voice continued. It is a guide, a navigator through the unknown. It can lead fleets beyond the edge of maps. It can find safe paths where none exist. It can unite worlds or bring them to ruin. Ethan's breath shook. And now it belongs to me? It belongs to no one, the voice answered. It follows the worthy, and now it follows you. Ethan dropped to his knees. But I can't do this. I'm just a human waiter. I don't even know how to fight. I don't know how to lead. The figure leaned closer, its form glowing brighter. Power is not given to the strongest, it is given to the one who will use it with care. Ethan felt tears in his eyes. Then what am I supposed to do? He whispered. The figure pointed toward the endless stars. Protect, guide, decide, for the galaxy will come for you, and the beacon will answer only to your heart. The vision faded. The void dissolved. Ethan gasped as he found himself back in the freighter's cargo bay. The beacon rested in his lap, still pulsing, steady as ever. He pressed his hand to his face, his body trembling. He wasn't dreaming. It was real. The beacon had spoken. The next morning, Joran found him pale and silent. You saw something, didn't you? The captain asked quietly. Ethan nodded slowly. It told me. It told me I was chosen. Joran gave a humorless chuckle. You think I wanted to live long enough to see this day? No. But fate doesn't ask, boy. It just happens. Ethan looked down at the beacon, his voice barely above a whisper. It said I must protect and guide, but I don't even know where to begin. Joran's eyes narrowed. Then you better start learning fast, because word will spread. And when it does, every empire out there will want what you carry. As if to prove his words, alarms blared across the freighter. Joran cursed, slamming controls. Overseer patrols, they've found us. Ethan's heart leapt, his hand clutching the beacon. The stars outside filled with enemy ships, sleek and dark, weapons glowing. Joran shouted, "Hold on!" As the freighter twisted sharply, energy blasts streaked past, shaking the ship. Ethan fell against the wall, gripping the beacon like his life depended on it. And in truth, it did. The device pulsed harder, almost alive, and in his mind, Ethan heard the whisper again, calm and clear. Guide them, protector, the path is yours to choose. Ethan's eyes widened as star maps lit up in his thoughts, glowing paths across the galaxy, hidden safe routes no one else could see. His heart raced, but his voice was, "Steady, Captain, turn 20 degrees starboard. Climb on the third vector now." Joran shot him a sharp look but obeyed. The freighter dove into the unknown, slipping through a path the overseer ships didn't even notice. Behind them, the enemy fired blindly. Ahead of them, space opened clear and wide. They had escaped. Ethan slumped back, the beacon glowing gently in his hands. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The realization hit him like a storm. This was no accident, no mistake. The beacon had chosen him for a reason, and now the fate of more than just himself rested in his hands. The freighter drifted in the shadow of a dying star. Its red light painted the hull in long streaks. Inside, Ethan sat with the beacon resting on his lap. The device glowed faintly, calm and steady, yet heavy with meaning. Every time he touched it, visions of paths and futures filled his mind. But with every vision came fear. Fear of what would happen if the galaxy knew the truth. Captain Duran walked into the cabin, his face lined with worry. "We can't keep running forever, boy," he muttered, dropping into the seat across from him. "The overseers won't stop. Bounty hunters won't stop. Even ordinary traders will turn against you for the right price." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know," he whispered. "But where do we go? Where do I go?" Joran sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You don't understand yet, do you? You're not carrying some shiny trinket, you're carrying power. Power that makes empires rise or fall." Before Ethan could answer, the comm system crackled. A smooth voice filled the room, deep and commanding. "Human bearer of the beacon, I know you hear me." Ethan froze, eyes wide. The voice continued, calm but sharp like a blade. "You cannot hide. Not from me. I am Verax, warlord of the Crimson Legion, and I offer you what no one else can." Joran cursed under his breath, slamming the console. But Ethan raised a hand, listening. The voice grew softer, almost tempting. "You are hunted, alone, afraid. But I can give you safety. I can give you fleets, wealth, and a throne. The beacon belongs in the hands of someone bold enough to use it. Not a frightened boy." Ethan's heart pounded, his throat dry. Verax's words slid into his mind like poison. For a moment he imagined it, himself commanding ships, respected instead of ignored, feared instead of forgotten. The waiter turned into a king. Duran slammed his fist on the table. "Don't listen, boy. He'll twist you. He'll bleed you dry until nothing's left." But the voice laughed softly through the comms. "Think, Ethan. Think of how they treated you. Invisible, unimportant, a servant to greater beings, but you are greater, and I will prove it to you." At that moment the beacon pulsed sharply. Ethan gasped, visions flashing behind his eyes. He saw Verax's fleets burning colonies, enslaving the weak, using the beacon to crush resistance. He felt the weight of thousands crying out in fear. The voice whispered again, "Choose, boy. Choose power, or choose death." Ethan tore the headset from his ears, gasping, his hands trembling. "No," he whispered. "I won't." The comms fell silent, but the echo of Verax's promise still lingered in his chest. Hours passed, and silence filled the freighter once more. Joran finally spoke, his voice low. "You'll be tested, over and over again. They'll offer you gold, glory, everything you ever wanted, but if you give in, it's over. For you and for everyone else." Ethan lowered his eyes, staring at the beacon. "I never wanted any of this," he said, his voice shaking. "I never wanted to be important, I just wanted a quiet life." Joran leaned forward, his gaze hard. "Fate doesn't care what you wanted, boy. It only cares what you'll do now." That night, while Joran slept, Ethan sat alone again. The beacon glowed brighter than before, pulsing with a rhythm that filled the room. Ethan touched it, whispering, "Why me? Why not someone stronger, braver?" The voice returned, calm and steady. "Strength without kindness destroys, bravery without mercy enslaves, only balance protects." Ethan swallowed hard, his chest tight. He remembered the stranger he had helped, the blood on his arm, the desperate eyes. He remembered making a choice without thinking, simply because it felt right. And now that one act of kindness had set the galaxy on fire. Suddenly, alarms blared through the freighter. Joran leapt into the cockpit, shouting, "They've found us again!" Ethan rushed to the window. Dozens of ships appeared, their lights sharp against the darkness. But these weren't overseers. These were pirates, mercenaries hungry for the reward. Blasts shook the freighter, sparks flying across the panels. Joran cursed, fighting the controls. "We can't outrun this many." Ethan felt the beacon pulse in his hands. Visions rushed into his mind. Asteroid fields, shifting paths, hidden tunnels in space. The safe routes were there waiting for him. But one vision showed something else. The pirates attacking a nearby colony. innocent lives at risk. If he led the freighter away, the pirates would turn on the colony instead. Ethan's chest tightened, his heart racing. He had a choice: save himself or protect others. Joran shouted, "What are you waiting for? Give me the path." Ethan's hands trembled. The beacon pulsed harder, whispering, "Protector, decide." Ethan closed his eyes, then opened them with new fire. "We can't run," he said firmly. Joran's head snapped around. "What? Are you insane?" Ethan stood tall, gripping the beacon, his voice steady. "If we run, they'll slaughter the colony. We have to stop them." Joran stared at him for a long moment, then gave a bitter laugh. "You really are insane, boy," he muttered. "But maybe that's what the galaxy needs." He slammed the controls, turning the freighter toward the swarm of pirate ships. The beacon flared in Ethan's hands, brighter than ever. For the first time, he wasn't running. For the first time, he was choosing. The rising conflict had begun, and Ethan, once just a waiter, now stood at the heart of it. The freighter soared straight into the swarm of pirate ships. Energy blasts streaked across the void, lighting the darkness with fire. Joran cursed loudly, pulling the controls with steady hands. "You better know what you're doing, boy," he growled. Ethan stood behind him, gripping the beacon, his eyes locked on the glowing patterns inside it. The device pulsed harder, flooding his mind with visions. Safe routes appeared like glowing lines across the battlefield. Weak points in enemy formations lit up like stars. Ethan's voice was steady, stronger than he expected. "Bank left, dive between the third and fourth ships now." Joran obeyed, and the freighter slipped through a narrow gap, enemy fire missing by inches. The pirates roared in frustration, turning to chase. But Ethan wasn't guiding only to escape. His eyes burned with determination. "They'll turn toward the colony next," he said. "We have to stop them here." Joran's jaw tightened. "We're one ship against dozens." Ethan's grip on the beacon tightened. "Not if I guide them wrong." He closed his eyes, the beacon's whispers filling his mind. He sent false signals, illusions of safe paths that led the pirates into danger. Some slammed into asteroids hidden in the dark. Others collided with each other, blinded by greed and speed. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Joran laughed in disbelief. "You're tricking them, boy. You're turning their own numbers against them." But the victory was not complete. From the largest pirate ship, a massive cannon charged, glowing with deadly power. If it fired, the colony would be destroyed in a single blast. Ethan's chest tightened, sweat dripping down his face. The beacon flared, showing him visions of two futures, one where he ran and survived, and one where he stayed and fought, risking everything. The voice whispered, calm but heavy, "Protector, decide." Ethan's hands trembled. He thought of his small cafe, of cleaning tables and smiling quietly. He thought of being ignored, being invisible, being nobody. And then he thought of the stranger he had helped. The words echoed in his heart. "Your kindness will change your life." Ethan opened his eyes, fire burning inside. "I won't run," he whispered. "Not anymore." He raised the beacon high, light bursting across the freighter. The device connected to the ship's systems, its glow spreading through. "The controls," Joran shouted in shock. "What are you doing?" Ethan's voice was calm, almost serene. Giving them a reason to fear humans, the freighter surged forward, faster than it had ever moved. The beacon guided its path with perfect precision. It dodged blasts, weaved through debris, and aimed. Straight at the pirate flagship, the massive cannon fired. But the beacon bent the path, curving the freighter just enough to slip through the beam. The light scorched past, missing by a breath. Then Ethan shouted, "Now!" Joran pulled the trigger, launching every torpedo the freighter carried. The missiles struck the flagship's cannon, exploding in a storm of fire. The ship cracked apart, flames spreading across its hull. The pirate fleet broke, their courage shattered. One by one, they fled into the void. Silence filled the freighter, broken only by Ethan's ragged breaths. The beacon dimmed, resting quietly in his hands again. Joran stared at him, eyes wide. You just saved an entire colony," he said, almost whispering. Ethan sank into the chair, exhausted. I didn't save them, he murmured. The beacon did. But Joran shook his head. No, boy. The beacon is just a tool. It needed someone to use it. And you chose to fight, you chose to protect, that's what matters. Hours later, the freighter landed on the colony's surface. Crowds gathered, their voices rising in awe. For the first time, Ethan saw how they looked at him, not as a waiter, not as a servant, but as something more, a protector, a hero. Yet Ethan felt the weight heavier than ever. He whispered to himself, I didn't ask for this. As night fell on the colony, Ethan sat alone with the beacon. It pulsed softly, as if listening. He whispered, They'll keep coming, won't they? The voice returned, calm and certain. Yes, overseers, warlords, hunters, all will come for the beacon and for you. Ethan closed his eyes, tired but resolute. Then I'll be ready, he said softly. I'm not just a waiter anymore. But, as he held the beacon close, another vision flashed suddenly in his mind. A shadow darker than anything he had seen before. An empire greater than the overseers, watching from the edges of the galaxy, waiting. The voice whispered one final warning. Others like you exist. Ethan's eyes snapped open, his heart racing. He stared into the stars beyond the horizon. If he was not the only one, what did that mean? Was he the first of many, or just the beginning of something far greater? The beacon pulsed once more, steady and strong, and in the quiet of the night, Ethan whispered, The galaxy thinks I'm nobody, but they'll learn who humans truly are. The waiter's destiny had begun, and the galaxy story was only starting.